Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Another plug for you guys. If you've not done so already, join the Locked On Cougars Insiders group. Get the inside scoop on all things BYU that I'm hearing coming to your phone in the form of a text message. It's a great way to build this community we have with the podcast, and it only costs $5 a month to be a part of the group. But the best part is, for those of you who sign up right now, 14 days free, 2 full weeks to see if it's the right option for you. Join today. Click the link in the show notes below and be a part of the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, before we go on today's show, let's talk a little bit about BYU's transfer portal needs. Obviously, I mentioned the BYU's, the pieces they have intact are very, very tantalizing. You obviously are going to have to monitor guys in the portal because BYU's not immune to guys potentially leaving. The crazy thing is you look at the roster, and there's still a lot of underclassmen on that roster that could be picked off. And if you believe that BYU is not having guys contacted or has been having guys contacted for quite literally months now via the transfer portal and the NIL agents, all the different people that are involved in it, you got your head buried in the sand. It is kind of the unspoken side of what the transfer portal entails. You are going to see multiple guys who enter the portal, immediately come back out of the portal, whether it's with their old program or new program, and it feels like it was just literal minutes when they did that. Well, it's because, some illicit contact is happening. But BYU's not immune to it, and they shouldn't take offense to it because the simple fact of the matter is literally everybody is doing it. All right, that brings me to the point. What does BYU need to add in the transfer portal? Well, number one, you got to find a replacement for Moet Mag. Obviously, he has been masterful as a 3-and-D guy for BYU, has been that lockdown defender. Can they go out in the portal and find a guy? Remember last year, Kevin Willard, the head coach of Maryland, if I recall correctly, called Moet Mag the best defender in college basketball. Well, Moet has proven to be everything BYU could have hoped for as a perimeter defender. You've got to find one of those guys in the portal if at all possible. Other guys I would be looking at. Well, Fousseyni Traore is exiting the program. Kebaketa is a fantastic big man on the law. His verticality, his vertical threat, awesome on offense. Elite defensively, obviously. But he does not have the back to the basket, toss it into the low post. That type of a guy, that's not Kebaketa. So you need to go out and find a guy who has a back to the basket game. Is Xavier Staten that guy, the incoming freshman? I wouldn't consider him to be that at this juncture. He could become it in time, but that will take development. So I'm looking for a big man. Now, Foose has been an absolute glue guy for BYU for multiple years. It's going to be hard to replace what he has meant to BYU, but you have to endeavor to find a replacement there. You look at other guys exiting the program. Trey Stewart. You also look at Trevin Nell. Guys who are proven to be spot-up shooters. And if Richie Saunders, heaven forbid, does decide to enter the NBA draft, etc., that leaves you a dearth of offensive talent on the perimeter. One of those, if not the guy on the perimeter who's going to be BYU's lead dog, is AJ Dybantsa. But he needs people to be able to spell him. I don't know what Cannon Catching's plan is. I don't know what Brody Kozlowski. I don't know what Elijah Crawford are thinking as freshmen who obviously didn't play a lot, especially late in the season in the case of a kid like Cannon Catchings. What do their futures hold? Are they going to look elsewhere? If they don't, those are phenomenal options to have as bench players, but I don't see, outside of Cannon Catching, should he develop nicely, any one of those guys being the legit option 2 on the wing to AJ Dybantsa. So I'm looking for a perimeter scorer. I'm looking for a true guy who is a threat from beyond the arc as a three-point shooter, because Kevin Young, he will generate copious amounts of three-pointers for guys. And if they're capable of hitting them, you're going to look absolutely phenomenal in this offense. I will also add this caveat. Anybody who BYU contacts would be insane not to consider playing for the BYU Cougars. I say that as the biased of all biased people, because let's look at what BYU is doing right now. NBA level offense, NBA level development, NBA style of play. Why wouldn't you? In your heart of hearts, why wouldn't you want to play for BYU? Okay, I get that the transfer portal might be a holdup for certain guys. I get that the academic requirements could be a holdup for certain people, but BYU will do their homework on those young men, and they will make sure that they check out before really proceeding too far down the path with those players. At least I would sincerely hope so, but I understand that BYU's administration, Kevin Young, they espouse to uphold what BYU stands for. The nice part about BYU is it's a fairly distraction-free zone to come and play basketball in. Remember, A lot of that stuff that can distract you off the court is stuff that BYU simply doesn't allow under the guidelines of the honor code. So I look at this as a major recruiting tool that BYU needs to tap into and find guys. So once again, you need a true 3-and-D guy. That's what Mag has been. I think he's priority number one because one of the toughest things to replace is a guy who can play elite perimeter defense in college basketball and, get away with it. I know get away with it sounds crazy to say that, but let's be honest. College basketball officiating yet again is just absolutely downright awful. And it's insane to look at how things go. But you need an elite defender. You need an elite perimeter scorer to be the Robin to AJ Dybantsa's Batman. I think at the point guard spot, whether Jaeger Demon exits or not, Dallin Hall is very capable, if he comes back for another year, of being the guy who holds it all down. And I'm saying all of this without really knowing who's in the portal at this juncture. It literally opened today. By the time you listen to this podcast, there could be guys from BYU whose names are in the portal. It's a crazy week here with BYU. And I don't know necessarily what to expect. I expect there will be some guys who exit the portal, but they may not enter the portal until after BYU's run in the NCAA tournament is done. And I think that's probably in their best interest because that could obviously upset the apple cart when it comes to BYU and the incredible run they're on right now. The portal does remain open until April 22nd. So there is plenty of time for BYU's guys to stay with the program, stay engaged, do the things they're doing. And whenever, if that run ends, BYU then can say, hey, thank you for sticking with us. Let's get you in the portal. Let's find out what we can help you out with, or if we can make it worth your while to stick around. I think the best thing you can do, and coaches will tell you this all the time, is keep the guys that are in the fold there if at all possible. Sure, there may be a player here and there that just the staff and he essentially decide that it's in their best interest mutually to part ways, but more often than not, coaches don't want to put in quite literally hours and months and years of work in developing players only to watch them hit the exit and look for another program to play for. They'd rather have guys that they've invested in stick around and continue to sink that investment into those players with the whole thought that those players, their loyalty will mean more to the program versus bringing in that so-called hired gun to bring them in and make them a part of your program. It's not I said it before, it's not an exact science because you're obviously trying to get a feel for guys in a very quick fashion and understand what their background's all about, how they fit in with teammates. You're doing so much background work in a very short order that you have to be very meticulous in how you go about it. But I think the BYU, priority number one, 3-and-D defender. Priority number two, I guess they're all priorities at this point. But 3-and-D defender. Back to the basket big man who you can toss it into the low block and they're going to get you a bucket in a moment you need it. That's what Fousseyni Traore, the one thing I will always give him credit for is when BYU needed big buckets, he could use that absolutely just gargantuan frame to clear space and more often than not put the ball in the bucket and help BYU get points. You need that type of a guy on this roster. And then also, like I said, you need somebody that can play off or some buddies plural that can play off AJ Dybantsa and be those guys who can be in the corner and knock down threes, can make their own play happen if AJ Dybantsa is getting double teams. You need guys who can be difference makers. I like what BYU has on the roster right now, especially if a Dallin Hall and Richie Saunders come back. BYU's poised to do some really special things. Dawson Baker, obviously, is a fantastic bench piece to come in. I look at this roster and say there's not a lot missing from it. We already heard that Mihailo Boskovic is going to come back. The Salt Lake Tribune had that story, and that's awesome to hear that he wants to come back for what will be his senior season as a 23-year-old. With another year of development, I think Mihailo can become an even better player than he already is. And he's been a fairly capable guy for this BYU team. But I look at even the young players, the Crawfords out there. If Jaeger Demon decides against all odds, it feels like, to spurn the NBA draft and come back to BYU, great. You could have a team that is formidable and absolutely will terrify certain teams out there. But you also have the opportunity to add guys via the portal to replace the pieces that are simply out of eligibility. I like where BYU's roster stands right now. I'm not here to say that BYU is dead in the water and needs to have a complete overhaul. In fact, quite far from it. The best part about where BYU sits right now is they can essentially go look at what's in the portal and then say, okay, are they better than what we have right now, or do we need to look elsewhere? And that is a phenomenal place to be if you're the BYU basketball program. So let me know what you think. Are there any other players you'd like to see BYU add? I'd welcome your feedback. Drop them in the notes below if you're watching this on YouTube. Sound off on social media. Send us an email. However you want to weigh in, let us know. What do you think the priorities that BYU needs to target in the transfer portal are? And we'll get to those on a future edition here of Locked On Cougars. But once again, as always, thank you so much for your guys' support. We're going to wrap it up here. Thank you for being everydayers here on the podcast. And as I often say, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day.